Today's spotlight is on the president and founder of Rethink Resource, Shane Harker. Hey, Shane, welcome, Shane. How's it going?
Hey guys,
All right,
welcome. Thanks for having me.
thanks for coming. Let me quickly introduce you to our audience. Hailing from the Toronto area in Canada, Shane Harker is hell-bent on changing the world, one piece of garbage at a time. He is the founder and president of Rethink Resource, an environmental waste diversion company focused on making sure trash is not wasted in landfills, but instead recycled and upcycled in the best ways possible. Rethink Resources diverted 88% of all the waste they've collected away from landfills. Now, Shane started his career working on a transportation dock at the age of 15 and then gained over 25 years of experience in business management, leadership, transportation, and waste. Prior to starting Rethink Resource, Shane is a dedicated father and husband and an amateur triathlete who also has a weakness for Reese's peanut butter cups, which is one of mine too. So, Shane, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you having you. So, feel free to go a little bit more into a little more detail about yourself, and please just add one thing in there that people simply can't Google about you.
Okay, so when I knew that question was going to come, I Googled myself because I'm like, can you Google me?
That's funny.
I
I don't think anyone's ever done that.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, there's a couple things there, and so the thing that you wouldn't find about me is that I'm a huge fan of Celine Dion, and people kind of
Wow.
laugh at it, like you don't see me in person. I'm a pretty big dude, so when I say that, people are like, oh really? And a little bit of funnier thing about that is when I met my wife, I think on like our second or third date, we went out, we're dancing, a couple drinks, and like Biggie Smalls comes on, and I knew like all the words. She's like, oh, I love that you know all that. But then later, I'm like, oh, hey, Celine Dion's coming to town, can we go to the concert? She's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, let's go. And then when we're there at the concert,
Nice
we're
segue.
kind of
Nice
close
segue.
to this.
Celine Dion.
Yeah. Well, close, right? And then we're kind of to the side, and Celine's walking by, and she's like, "Hey, why don't you go down there and try and get like a selfie with her or whatever?" And she was setting me up though, because my wife took a picture of me like trying to take a selfie with Celine, and she posted it on her Instagram. And so yeah, that's my Celine Dion story.
That's awesome.
That's
Can you sing "My Heart Will Go On"? Can you sing some Celine Dion?
Can I
You
sing
want
it?
him to sing it? Uh-oh.
Uh,
I'm willing to hear it.
I could, but I think your viewers might not come back. So we'll save that for Celine.
All right. Well, my first question: how exactly did you decide to get into waste management?
Well, so it's interesting. My brother is a City of Toronto 30-year garbage man, and all the things they always told me about it. I was in transportation, my whole life, and I got a call from a recruiter to go and work for the largest waste hauler in North America, which is where I actually met Rob's wife, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. And but in residential waste collection, a lot of contracts they work 4-day work weeks, and when I heard that, I'm like, okay, I'm in, let's go. And so I went to work there, and that's when that's when I learned about anaerobic digestion and organic waste and all of these things. I mean, before I started there, I was a bachelor in a basement apartment. I didn't even recycle.
Mm.
And I was like, it's just one bag of garbage, said 8 billion people, later. And then, when I got back into transportation, and when I was approaching 40, looking at my son and my wife, and I was quite successful in what I was doing, but something was missing. And so I wanted to start a business, and I quit with a very supportive wife, and it kind of morphed into Rethink Resource. So
I love that. All right, Lizzie.
mostly because that's what I knew how to do. So
Well, hey, go do what you know. Do what you're passionate
Yeah.
about. Lizzie?
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. The first is explain to us exactly what it is that Rethink Resource does. Like, what does your company do?
Sure. So we actually do a couple of things. And so the company started as a brokerage. I had managed employees for so long, and I kind of didn't want to do that. The plan was I come to your business, hey, you have waste. We're going to introduce a recycling program. And as a broker, I could, get better pricing. So, we would charge you about the same, maybe less than what you were paying, but introduce recycling. And so I make a little bit of money. We divert more from landfill. Like I knew that I wanted to have an impact in the world. Like I didn't pay myself for the first 3 years. I left a very lucrative job, and so I had to divert waste. And so that was the plan. But then the very first customer, the vendor couldn't do what we needed to do. So next thing you know, I'm picking up paper for recycling and cans and bottles in my Dodge Journey. And shortly after, a couple customers, customer said to me, said, "Can you give us a diversion report?" And diversion reports are like, this is how much you divert, but it's not real data. It's averages. Like you have 2 recycle bins, 2 garbage bins. On average, they weigh this much. So he said, "Well, why don't you actually weigh the stuff you pick up?" I'm like, "Sure, we're not making any money, so why don't we make the process more inefficient?" But I knew data was important, right? And so we did it, and I'm like, we'll figure out how to make money eventually. And so we did that for a couple of years. It was kind of a side hustle in the garage, and then we focused on the business and started growing. And one of my customers, so this gets into the sort of the second part of the business. So one of my customers got their diversion report, and they're like, "Hey, we're only it was a burger shop in Toronto. He says, "Hey, we're only diverting 57% of our waste. How do we improve that?" And I said, "Well, you're a quick serve, like it's a local burger shop, but it might as well be like a McDonald's or whatever else. It's all your packaging is garbage." And he said, "Well, like how do you do? Like, I'm like, I don't like there's compostables and biodegradable." And he's like, "Well, you're the green guy, figure it out."
You're the
So
green guy.
2019, I actually went to the U.S. Composting Conference in Phoenix, Arizona. And, what was key to me is I wanted to make sure that whatever we did, it wasn't greenwashing and it was like legit, because there's so much out there, green this and echo that. And so, I'd done a little bit of research, and I figured out that there's actually compostable packaging. Pretty much anything you can get out of any, quick serve restaurant, you can get in a compostable. But so I went there to the conference and learned, and then I came back and we did a pilot, and we swapped out all of their waste or their packaging, sorry, for compostables. But then the next step was that it's like, can you actually, nobody wanted to take the stuff. I'm like, could you actually compost it? So we again, I have a very patient wife. I built a pretty large composter in my backyard, and we compost the
Oh,
stuff.
Wow.
And it didn't stink. When you get the recipe right, compost is a recipe. It didn't stink. And so we composted it, and then so we started Rethink Packaging. So now we sell only compostable packaging, and we pick it up and we bring it to a composter. But the kind of the coolest thing we did was we took the compost, mix it with some soil, put it outside the burger shop, and we grew lettuce and tomatoes in it. And then they died because
What's
I'm
the
not a
face,
farmer,
Liz?
and I planted it too late. But the great thing about compost is we saved it till next year. And so the final sort of segment to this was, we ate burgers with lettuce and tomato on it that we grew in the compost that came from,
That's awesome.
the waste in the packaging. And so, down the road is Rethink Farms. They're trying to buy a farm now because I have to truck the compost 2 hours east of Toronto to compost it. So we're looking for a farm just outside of Toronto where we can do it locally. And then there's been some evolution on the data front, and we've developed our own software and stuff. And we're trying to get bigger, so there's some neat things coming there. But the meat and potatoes of it is packaging, pick it up, compost it, and that's what we do.
That's
so
wonderful.
you're just
Nice.
segueing right into my next very short question about composting. So
Okay.
I am deathly afraid of dirt, bugs, worms, waste, all that stuff. And so I live in an apartment complex here, so I don't have to worry about composting. Like, we're required to recycle as best we can.
Okay.
But I'm hoping to be a homeowner in the next couple of years. And I have all of these
Okay.
friends now that have a compost. When I lived in Finland, that was when I was first introduced to composting. We had a big compost in the back, and I threw up the first time we went out there. And so, what do you say to yourself who's just like, oh my God, that's so gross? Like, I understand the importance for the environment, but to me,
Yeah.
it's just gross. It's so you saw my face when you just said that you ate like vegetable compost. Like, what?
Yeah,
That's
but
so crazy to me.
well, so like we're not, when I told my niece about this, she's like, "Oh, that's so neat," and I'm like, I didn't invent this stuff. This stuff's been going on forever, right?
Yep.
Like farmers used to come into the city and bring vegetables, and they take the stuff out and they mix it into their soil, and it's the nutrients that go back into the ground. I mean, the vegetables you're eating probably,
Yeah,
use
most certainly.
cow manure as
Cow
a
manure.
as a fertilizer, right? So you just don't see it. And
I don't
what I
want
would
to
say
see
is
it.
grosser. Wait,
I don't want to see it.
in a second, I'm going to tell you about black soldier fly larvae. You want to get grossed out? Google that because that's a whole other thing that we're working on. And so,
Black soldier fly larva. I'm gonna have to check it out actually.
yeah, it's a particular kind of fly. Check it out on YouTube, and
I'm gonna
it'll
see if I
eat
can find it right
anything.
now.
And then we're going to start that on the farm. We're gonna take food, or organic waste, and we're gonna feed it to larvae. And there's a couple companies doing this all over the U.S. and Canada. And then the larvae are like super efficient at converting that food into protein and fat, and then they feed it to fish or to chickens, right? Which it's like just goes back into the food system. So, but about the compost. So here's the interesting thing. My wife is like, "Hey, isn't that thing gonna stink?" And I was like, "Well, no, not if the recipe's right." Mind you, this is the first time I made the recipe, and I kind of lucked out. Like I was like, "Yeah, babe, I got it. Don't worry." And I really did get lucky. But so here's the thing: is when you compost, if you do it right and you either turn it enough or you get air into it, it heats up and it goes up to, like, we got ours up to 73 degrees Celsius. It was above, and I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's hot. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius here. And so it was above 70 for 10 days. And so when the recipe is right, it doesn't really stink. And the flies won't go to it and drop off the babies, so they don't get the maggots and stuff. So versus like if you put it in your garbage bag and it doesn't get picked up, or the critters get in it, like in Toronto, raccoons are crazy, and they rip the bags apart and there's maggots all over the place. That's grosser than recovering. The premise of the company is Rethink Resource, to use that as a resource, right? And then there's a whole other side of it. When it goes to landfill, it creates methane gas and it's horrible for the environment and stuff.
All right, so I got a picture of the was this black soldier fly larva.
Oh my goodness.
That's just for Lizzie.
But there's a video. There's all kinds of videos on there where they do like a time lapse and they just like devour a fish, or somebody threw like a Big Mac meal in there or something. And they just kill it. Like they'll eat anything, except that you can put your hands in there. They won't eat you. Like if you're live.
Yeah.
I'm barely making it through the cicadas down here. Now we got, what is it called? Black what larva?
Black soldier fly.
Soldier fly larvae.
Okay. Y'all have to give me a minute.
So
here.
they're
I'll get
worms?
there. I'll get
All right,
there.
let me
I'm
get
sorry, Yanni?
They're
say-
worms? Those larvae are worms, or are they flies?
No, larvae.
Like
Larvae is like the baby fly. It's a maggot, and it's just a particular kind of fly that eats more and converts it better into protein and fat.
All right.
Okay,
So
interesting.
let's get to some of these comments online. So, question was, how wasteful are you guys? Lady Annie Burrill says, I try as much as possible to buy anything that does not involve plastic, compost, upcycle. Thank gosh for the Hibbs is patient, because the project in my house are never ending. Jeanette Brown says, one thing I actually miss about the suburbs is composting. I grew up composting and was happy to return to it in the burbs, but back in the city and apartment life now, and back in the city and apartment life now, and back to garbage disposal. Jacqueline Robb says, my condo building recycles, but shockingly, my work building does not. Oh, and Mike Wolf said, Lizzie, it's not like there's an option where your garbage magically disappears. You got to get rid of it somehow. Composting is the best way.
I just don't like to
Yeah.
think about it, but I'll get there. I will get there. I will get there.
There's a whole, like, I met a whole bunch of startups around different parts of the US, because so in Canada, most municipalities, even rural areas, have green bin collection.
Mm.
And in Ontario, I think it's by 2023 that every residential has to have access to it. There's certain states that have a mandate to divert organics from landfill, but there's all kinds of startups where you can sign up and they'll give you pails and you put your organics in there, they'll pick it up, and then they'll even bring you back the finished compost, which doesn't have any, critters or anything running around in it, but then you can mix it and grow some vegetables at home or something. Like, there's all kinds of startups in the US that are doing that.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's missing here because in most of like the apartment complexes, condo complexes, they have like regular garbage, they have
Yeah.
recycles, but not anything for organic living stuff. So I
Yeah.
think that's the next phase. I think that's the next phase here.
All right, we're going to go to Gianni Storm next. I was going to go to Rob Bean, but I want to go to Gianni Storm next.
I actually had a question on any tips or advice you had for waste diversion, like something I could do, like something I could start. I know I can obviously like recycle, but is there a step above that, like that we
That was
could
my
do?
next question for him at the end. That's a good
So
question.
it's actually the step before that, right? And it sounds kind of cheesy, but we all learned when we were in school, like, reduce is the first R, right? So we're, in my space, in my circle, the people that I connect with, I know a woman that sells these like zero waste kits. And when I met her, we went to like a cafe and they didn't have a green bin program for the organics. And she had like a mason jar that she put the scrap in there and brought it home, right? So I mean, that's next level. And so, I would say, as consumers, you can pay, like, spend your dollars at the places that do it. But I would say reduce is always, and I'm not perfect. I probably in the last, week or so, I went through a McDonald's drive-through. But consumers are going to consume, right? And so that's why we got into the compostable packaging. So I don't know that, I would say that reduce always first. Reduce consumption, reduce packaging. Look to the companies that are like thinking about their packaging. And support the companies that are doing things different. In Ontario and the GTA, there's again all kinds of companies. Like, there's a company that'll deliver, soap to soap in reusable bottles, and there's all kinds of markets that are popping up. And that'll deliver soap, and I just switched to a straight razor and the way it used to be done, like a brush and I'm not having any waste. So sorry, I
Interesting.
kind of don't know if that answered your question, Gianni, but I would say reduce always, and if you want to get hardcore, carry a mason jar with you.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my question. My ending question is like anything that anybody can do
Sorry.
that's sort of different. No, it was a great question. So,
I- So what I would say though is that, in waste, in traditional solid waste, people are really concerned about plastics.
Mhm.
And it really started with the turtle video, and it frustrates the hell out of me because straws are like this big of the problem, right? And
I was thinking that.
so it became a problem, and everybody switched to
Paper.
compostable straws, but they're all going in the same bin and they're all going in the landfill.
That's what I was wondering.
What I would say is Lizzie, is the number one thing we can do is divert organic waste. So if you're in a building, talk to them about starting a program. Find a place, because that's the biggest impact. Is organic waste goes to landfill. It's the biggest impact on the environment, and that's the number one thing anybody can. So reduce, don't waste it, but then divert it from the landfill.
I actually have, because I think the paper straws, I think they're disgusting and gross.
I hate paper
So I
straws.
have my own set
They are
of
weird.
straws that I will take with me to restaurants now, because I
Yeah.
can't stand like the paper straws. But another thing I think people aren't aware of, and I'm not sure how popular this is in Canada. Do you guys have like all of the meal plans, like people who subscribe to, you get like 5 meals per
Yeah.
week from this?
Hello Fresh,
Yeah,
meals
yeah.
to go,
Plated.
that stuff. Yeah.
That I remember when I was subscribed to one meal plan, the amount of waste that they use, plastics
It's
and
true.
all that stuff, when
That's
they
true.
send them, it's ridiculous.
That's true.
Like the packaging is just so crazy. And
I
this
hadn't
is
even
when I lived in,
considered that.
and I remember opening the box and I'm like, okay, why is this big old piece of plastic sitting here? Like
Mhm.
it was just for no reason. And so that's another area I think, even though people are thinking about plastic bottles and straws, that's another area now where there's a lot of waste being
Food
utilized.
packaging.
Because
Well, and
those plants are very popular. They're very popular.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
they are.
because they're convenient, right? So as an entrepreneur, I try to watch movies that are inspiring. And if you've ever watched The Founder, where the Ray Kroc goes to the first McDonald's stand and he gets it and they're like, oh, just throw it out. It was like, as an entrepreneur that wants to impact the world and build a big business, I was like moved, but then I was like almost crying because I'm like, the amount of waste that these QSRs pump out is crazy. And so the challenge, with say eliminating plastic, and at the end of this year we have a across Canada is a single-use plastic ban, and it's only certain items, but we're going to waste more food, right? And that's a whole other thing that I've learned about. Like in Canada, we waste almost 60% of the food that's created, that people could be eating. And so
Wow.
locally, in fact, one of my customers, if I can get a shout out to BioRaw, they do these ready-made vegan salads, and they're for sale in in a lot of grocers, but they also do the home delivery. But they are in compostable plastic bowls, and they're like about as zero waste as it gets. So there are these options. There's another one that's not a customer yet. It's a pizza joint, and it's like a subscription. My son loves pizza, but it's really good, and you get 10 pizzas, and they're about to switch to compostable plastic. So everything that is out there is available and compostable. We don't have the infrastructure yet everywhere, but we're even talking about like how do you get that stuff to send back? So if you really want to compost it, like ship it to Rethink Resource. So we're moving in that direction. And it's so I would say if you do that, if you get those meals, see if they will entertain switching, because the difference is only about 10% on the cost of the packaging, just the packaging, which is a small portion of the cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to Robbie Rock's question. Well, wait, a couple of comments online before I get to you, Rob. Sorry. So Paulette Bertrand says, this is how it works in Quebec. Green bins are provided, but you have to abide by the rules. Respect the environment by replacing waste in all forms. Ephraim, my father, says, every resource is good for something. What is waste for something useful? What else can waste be used for? We need to research more alternative uses of waste. And Mel Blaine says, there are a lot of rules, regulations for shipping packages. I had to take a 2-day course for my job for it. It's not green at all.
Oh, wow.
Jeanette Brown says, Lizzie Enders, teeny tiny bottles of olive oil. They're cute, but as wasteful as can be. All right, Robbie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's right.
So Shane, the environmentalist Boy Scout in me says, thank you for all of your hard work. I think what you're doing is amazing. Your business model is something that I believe in also. I think what you're doing is remarkable. Your discussion and the questions asked by my fellow panelists have emptied my bank of questions. So based on our conversation pre-show, please tell me about your vision for your company's future and expansion.
Yeah, so thank you. We like many companies, the pandemic hit us hard, dropped 53% in revenue, and it was kind of crazy because we just kind of started making it. I had just started paying myself a bit of money in 2019, and we were heavy into like the food and restaurant space. and we did a bit of a a bit of a pivot, and we finished strong the year. So we have our eyes set on remembering that I wanted to create impact in the world, and I used to work for the largest in North America, so I know that the market is out there. And I also don't like the snow. So we want to start up actually in Los Angeles, Southern California. And
Cool.
that's it's strategic, and then so I think it's Oregon, Washington State, California, so basically all the West Coast. There are various different types of landfill bans on organics, and then like New York State, Rhode Island, there's a couple over in the East Coast. So part of I don't want to be in the snow in the winter, so we want to start up down in Southern California, and also because of the landfill ban, like right now in Ontario, there's nothing saying you can't throw all of that stuff into the garbage, and so and we're heavy into the food waste space, and it just evolved that way. I mean, we handle all wastes for everybody. And so we want to start up down there, and also like the greater Los Angeles area is 27 million people, like it's almost the size of Canada population wise, and then grow. And it's really about we're a small company, but a year ago we were 5 people, and I think we're 18 now. And I said to everybody, towards the beginning of this year, I think we were at 4 million pounds, and we're on our way to 1 billion. And how do we get there? Just by doubling every year. And so that's the vision. The other part to that is evolving the technology component. I'm a bit of a nerd, and we got some custom software being developed, and we're about to do a pilot with a large grocery chain in Canada. And basically, we're going to sort of analyze the waste, because reduce is the first R. So we're going to use AI technology to analyze the waste and give the data back to the grocer. And eventually we'll use it for all of our customers. Like, this is what's in your waste. Why did you have those 22 apples that weigh this much? And then they can be like, okay, why is that there? And then take steps to reduce it. And meanwhile, we'll be hopefully diverting that, grow our partnership with Second Harvest, which is a food rescue agency in Canada. And, they get food, breaks my heart. I grew up, pretty poor single mom. And I don't remember ever being hungry. But we're throwing food away into the landfill that should never get there, and it should always go to people first. So our model has really evolved, like feed people, then animals, then the larvae for the animals, and then compost. And so
Wow.
the hopefully to get the data to the customers to say reduce it first. I mean, essentially, I want to work my way out of a job, but there's always going to be something to collect. So yeah.
Okay. All right.
Wow,
Awesome.
Shane. Amazing.
Any final questions from anybody on the panel?
No, I just wanted to say I think the waste of food is another conversation
Yeah, I
that
was
we
thinking that as he was talking.
day, because Shane, I gotta tell you, I cook a lot, but I also waste a lot of food.
Me
Yeah.
I
too.
just out my refrigerator yesterday, and I was throwing away vegetables and all kinds of things that I'm just like, you didn't even touch this, and now
Yeah.
it's trash. So I think that's another conversation that we may need to bring you back on.
Yeah, I know
and
there's a
help
few
us.
things in my refrigerator right now that unfortunately I'm going to have to throw out.
It's a problem.
Same.
It's a problem, man. Woo,
Yeah.
it's a problem.
Yeah.
I'll,
It's a big problem.
I was going to say,
One stat
okay,
Sorry,
go
one
Shane.
stat I'll share with you about that is, and it was Second Harvest they got with some universities, and I don't think there's been any research like this in the U.S. But in Canada, we waste nearly 60% of the food that's created for humans to eat. So, like when you think about it, we waste twice as much food as it takes to feed the
To
country,
eat.
and there's hungry people, right?
Wow.
And we got
And so
hungry
it's
people out here. Woo.
as this has evolved for me, and you
I wouldn't be
learn
surprised if
stuff.
the US is
Now I'm
similar.
like, am I growing fast enough? How am I? Like it's kind of heartbreaking.
I'm
That
sure
is
the
hilarious.
US is very similar. I'm curious what the stats are for the US, but it's probably the same, if not worse.
Guilty.
Yeah.
I am guilty. I am guilty.
So Paulette Bertrand says, the world needs more people like you, Shane. Thank you for your concern in making this happen. So Shane, I want to give you, before we close out, I just want to give you a few minutes to say any final words, and then tell people where they can find you and find out more information about you and your company.
Sure. So I think the first thing I'll say is Happy Father's Day to my father. I haven't, because of COVID, I haven't seen him in 2 years. We just got our second vaccination this week, so I think we're going to be able to get to the island
Beautiful.
in August. Mostly, I want to always, thank my wife and my son for their patience. My wife was carrying us for 3 years until I started making some money. And my son, who's putting up with like 18-hour days and whatever, and even like today, Father's Day, they're up at the skate park, so I can be here. And as far as reaching us, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, mine is at Harker Shane. The company is at Rethink Rink, so Rethink RINC. We're probably most active on Instagram. We do lots of videos like with the larvae and dropping off the compost, and check the stuff out. And I'm hoping to announce soon the farm, and maybe you guys come up and turn some compost with us next year or something.
That sounds like fun, actually. When we go see, we're going to see Rob sometime soon. So as soon as the border opens, so we'll just come see you as well, and we'll have Lizzie check out all the larvae, and we'll definitely we'll take video of it and post it.
We'll get Lizzie to spin the composter in the backyard here.
I'm going to see Robin Jose. I don't know about a compost.
You're not going to make a pit stop to see Shane and Rethink Resource.
I'll go to the mall that day. I'll go to the mall that day.
All right, Shane. I want to thank you so much for joining us. This was a great interview, great speaking with you, and I believe you really taught us a lot. So I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Shane. All right.